this month.
Okay,
Which is
great.
great.
And Rob, I've appointed you as process observer, and then I just need to approve some minutes. We need to get some minutes approved. Okay. Sorry, there's a note here about the SAU governing board meeting. So just to remind everyone, you actually can vote on the minutes even if you were absent, missing the last meeting. We learned that at the SAU governing board meeting, right? Is that, there's a note here that summarizes that, okay. So, I need a motion to accept the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board, minutes of October 16, 2024 with the following amendments, and there's quite a few, and I'm gonna read them. Page 2, line 36, delete did 2 following in attendance 2. Page 3, line 12, replace 3/5 with 3/5. 3/5. Page 3, line 25, insert member before and right. Page 10, line 30, correct the spelling of until. Page 10, line 37, replace the period with a comma. Page 11, line 15, replace leading with leaning. Page 12, line 17, delete that following subsequent to. Page 15, line 40, replace still not with not still. Page 17, line 6, replace the period with a comma. And page 18, line 46, rate should be plural. So I need a motion to accept as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Kate. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Krista. Is there any other comments or amendments? All those in favor? 5-0. Motion carries. I also have some non-public minutes. I need a motion to accept as presented.
So moved.
And those are from October 16th.
Second.
And that's it. Moved by Krista, seconded by Kate. And there are no amendments to those. All those in favor of the non-public minutes? 5-0. Motion carries. Okay. All right. Moving on. We do have, we're intending to have a discussion with Jim O'Shaughnessy about our special meeting. Unfortunately, he's not here yet, and we're also running a little bit early. So, what I'm gonna do is open the floor for public input, even though we're opening it early. But I'm gonna extend it beyond the 30 minutes. So I'll extend it until 7, so that it'll be open now until 7. If people come in and want to speak to something, they certainly can. We may have to move things around, but if they come in before 7. So I'm going to open the floor now at 6:05, and someone, I know one of you, will be happy to remind me at 7 to officially close the floor. Drew, do you want to wait until Jim's here, or are you okay?
I was going to address the rule changes
Sure.
you suggested.
Perfect.
I can wait for Jim if you like, or
Nope,
I
that's
can
okay. Let me
just
just
go into it.
let the public know that when people speak to us from the podium in public, that it's not generally a back and forth. It might be with you a little bit more, and that we expect that you state your name and address for the record.
Drew Mason, Baxter Road, Hollis, and I'm also moderator of the Co-op School District. You'll have to excuse me, I've been fighting this cold for 2 weeks, and from people I talk to, I've got at least another week to go.
Who's winning?
What?
Who's winning?
Today, right now, I think I'm winning, but, you know.
There you go.
You asked me for 3 significant rule changes, and I thought about it, and I also discussed it with members of the Hollis Select Board, because at least on paper, they're the same set of rules. And they basically had the same concerns that the Co-op School Board had, having to do with the length of the meeting and how repetitive some of the comments can be. So I'm willing to give it a try. I may well reorder and rewrite some of these rules, but in terms of the existing one from the 2023 annual report, Rule 6 says sponsors of petition warrant articles are allowed 10 minutes to present their case. We are going to remove that one, but I'm going to leave that voters proposing amendments get 5 minutes. Now, I do have a concern about that specific one, which is not all articles, not all petition articles require a public hearing. So, if one of those comes up, the school board and/or the budget committee should think about whether that article should have a public hearing or whether the proposer should have more time at the annual meeting.
Okay.
That's my only real concern with that. The second one is Rule 23, which when a motion to end debate passes, debate ends. We're certainly familiar with the line that goes off over the horizon and takes us another hour to finish talking about it. So they have to wait in line to get the floor, and then they have to make the motion, and it has to be seconded, and then voted by 2/3, which is standard. And the third was a warrant article. To change the order of warrant articles would require a 2/3 vote. And, you know, I'm willing to give these a try, and our voters are not shy. So either at the meeting or before or after, they will let us know if they really don't like it. And one Hollis selectman who you can probably think of has already filled my ear, but on balance, he said, well, maybe these are good. Let's give them a try.
Well, thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
Tom, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was thinking about what you had said at the last meeting about how you, in the past, have determined who gets to speak to the petition warrant articles, and,
Yeah.
and what you had said is that it's whoever's making the motion.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, with a petition warrant article where there is no specific petitioner, and where it is the board's meeting, and we can't not offer it, whether the board should be the one making the motion to bring the article forward.
I think it might send the wrong message if the board is making a motion to adopt SB 2, even with the negative recommendation.
Well, what I was thinking on going along that line is that if in fact you decide, or the group decides that they want a presentation regarding petition warrant articles that didn't have a hearing, or even ones that did, that whoever was making the motion, in this case a board member, could also give the facts about what it is. Because what I think happens is it's not just a presentation about the article that takes a long time, it's the advocacy of the motion, that defining what the article is offering is a relatively small and quick presentation. So I'm not saying make that the default, but if you determine that there is a need to have explanatory introduction to petition warrant articles, that this board might want to consider whether or not they want to be the group putting the motion forward.
I think we can think about that as we move forward, but I just want to say, Drew, I really appreciate that you listen to us and that you're willing to try the changes that we were hoping you would try. I mean, I really appreciate that. And if he comes to you, you can send him to us too, because we can take the heat too. So.
Yeah, well, I'm a big boy, and I already get plenty of heat for these kind of things. I would like to point out that these are published in the annual report, and the annual report will not be available prior to any special meeting. So
Okay.
It'll come out like days before the annual meeting.
Okay, okay.
How you publish the rules changes for that purpose.
Okay.
Is,
Yeah, special meeting rules, we'll have to figure that out, yeah.
right. Now, I've gotten a little bit of guff about, the term sponsor, because while it's not in legislation, it's not. It's in moderator rules. I make it up, and I propose it. And, so far, I've never had an issue with who's the sponsor. Generally, there is a spokesperson who is quite upfront in terms of leading the charge. So, at any rate, I would agree that we can figure out how to present petition articles when it comes up.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much, Drew. Thanks a lot.
All right.
All right, is there any other public input before we move on to Jim? No? Okay. All right, so you're gonna stay there, Drew, and so, I'm gonna need a little help leading this through the Jim thing. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Just introduce you to the public, Jim
Hi,
O'Shaughnessy.
public.
And you're here to help us, navigate the waters of a potential special meeting on our Articles of Agreement and apportionment formula validation, I'm gonna call it.
Okay.
Grab the mic.
Do you have a mic?
Yeah, absolutely.
I will in a moment. Rob, you probably need one. All right. So, how do you want to do this, Holly?
I don't know how I want to do it.
Andy? Do you want to? So, sorry, it's out of here. I put a memo together for the board, folks, and administration. I only have 11, so I don't have copies for everybody. I actually
Get one,
might have an extra copy for our moderator. It's not a big deal.
I think you have enough here. I don't know. I think we can get one to everybody who, I don't know if our student reps really want the memo. You sure, Margaret? Are you sure you don't want one?
If you can read this,
They'll
then
look sure.
I will be impressed
All
because
you. Just make sure Drew gets one.
I think there's enough for like. So I always find when it comes to like putting something like this together, it's better to start with document and writing and putting it all down, and then we can work back from there. So I consider this all to be kind of proposed and in draft form and ideas. So please don't take this as carved in stone. With respect to part A, really there's 3 steps. There's the steps for the special meeting, the calendar that correlates to the steps, and the draft warrant articles. I put this together today because it's been a very busy fall, but I think everything's in here. The steps are pretty straightforward. I tried to make this literally like something that you just have to follow, but the big thing for the board is decide on the date. If you want to hold the special meeting, you have to take a vote to hold the special meeting. That can happen at a regular board meeting. I put in the calendar your 12/11 board meeting just because it gives you a little time, but that would really, to me, be the last date, because at that meeting, you would want to have a warrant prepared. Although it seems a little backwards, you would probably want to have a warrant prepared either for that meeting or during that meeting that you can sign and attest at the meeting for the special meeting, and that warrant then carries forward. You publish it in the newspaper, you post it throughout the district, you hold a public hearing, and then after the public hearing, you're kind of ready to go. You post it one more time as the final warrant. It's a little redundant, and then you hold your special meeting. It's kind of a condensed process. There's some time, there's extra time I built into the schedule. Just so, for instance, I have you publishing the warrant in the newspaper and posting the notice of the public hearing on 12/19, so that you're not pushing into the holiday break, and you know, Andy's staff doesn't have to like worry about coming in the week after Christmas to like get things into the newspaper. So I just kind of front-loaded everything, and then public hearing date would be something like January 16th. I just went with Thursdays because you guys love Thursdays.
Could it be January 15th, a public hearing at a regularly scheduled co-op board meeting?
You could, yeah, that's totally flexible. Yep. If you want me to like make those changes, I'm happy to do it in the actual document itself, but Yeah, those are all very flexible. With a meeting being on 1:30, the only challenge that I'll note is having that special meeting, like Andy threw out some like possible dates, and I pushed back on February because of all the SB2 meetings. Brookline and any of the towns, or is it,
I think Brookline's the only SB2, the school district.
okay.
Right, is the town?
Here, correct.
Yeah, right.
Because you could push the special meeting date into that first week of February. Like I said to Andy, that's a really busy time for like me and people on my team because all the SB2 deliberatives are that first week.
So your availability is better on
Like
the
I'm like
30th.
multiple booked in multiple places.
So the 30th, you're more available, or
Much
somebody
more.
from your team is more available.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I mean, to be honest, like I want to kind of be here because I kind of like to have some
'Cause
control.
you love us.
I want to have like, I want this to go smoothly, and when it's all said and done, I want to make sure like things are filed and
Right.
you know votes are done properly, and make sure we control amendments. Just because it's an amendment to the Articles of Agreement, so I want to have some closeness to it. I guess I'll call it.
What about the week after?
The week after, that's fine. You can push it out into mid to late February. None of that would be a problem.
I thought there was a number of days before that got violated by that.
Right, because we're March 4th is our annual meeting.
Yeah, I have to look that up. I don't know the
Yeah, do you need the
exact
calendar?
answer. I need
would
the
say
statute.
that the availability of the administrators is non-existent that week due to all the other public hearings. So.
Yeah, I don't,
Which week?
this looks also very
The second
familiar to
week
me.
of February?
I don't want to have to redo this. It's like- and then fit this in with it. It's too many moving parts. So I would encourage you to do it on this timeline.
So just for the board's information, I have touched base with the Hollis school moderator, and that date she's available that day, and she's able to do it, Liz Brown. The only issue she has is that it would have to start at 7. She has another commitment that could take her till about 5 o'clock in Concord. So, so she's available. Just for your information.
Another really interesting thing is when I was putting this together, I was reviewing the calendar I did last time in 2019, and the calendar I prepared a similar document on November 13th, 2019. So history
we
is
did it in January
Literally
2020.
repeating itself.
Right. We
5
did it
years
January
ago.
2020.
Yeah. So I felt kind of weird about that. It was all just happening again, like a strange dream. So here we are. But this is the more exciting part, is part C, the warrant article stuff, where I just kind of, and this is where I want your feedback and input and thoughts and questions. The first one is I think there are two things that you need to potentially try to accomplish either at a special meeting or at your annual district meeting. One is clean up your apportionment formulae. The formula for the apportionment of capital expenses, in my opinion, and I think you've raised that before. I think it was raised a couple of times, but it's literally specific to the principal and interest on bonds. It really should be the apportionment formula for all capital expenses of the district, which far more things fall under that definition than just principal and interest of bonds. And the statute, the co-op statute that you were formed under, 195-18, has a statutory definition of capital expenses. This is not, like, this didn't take a lot of imagination on my part. All I did was I inserted the definition from the statute into the proposed amendment to the warrant article so that it would read, capital expenses of the co-op payable in each fiscal year shall be apportioned based on ADM and EV according to the table below, and then I put the definition of capital expenses shall include the cost of acquiring land and buildings for school purposes, semicolon, the construction, furnishing and equipping of school buildings and facilities, semicolon, and the payment of the principal and interest of any indebtedness which is incurred to pay for the same, or which is assumed by the cooperative school district. That's the end of the definition. I put another parenthetical here, comma, including but not limited to the principal and interest of bonds and lease purchase agreements. Because that covers you in case someone were, I don't want to get too big into the weeds here, but for complicated reasons, lease purchase agreements with non-appropriation clauses, such as a lease purchase agreement for the turf field, is not considered long-term debt under RSA 33. I don't want to get into why. It has to do with the non-appropriation clause being in there. But I thought it would be important to add the including but not limited to principal and interest of bonds and lease purchase agreements, all of which would be for construction purposes, buildings, furnishing, and equipment. Questions? I know you're all like, what is he talking about?
No, I think
So
it's-
many
When,
words.
think
when
it's
this
nice
was
and tight.
first suggested to me, it was viewed as an up or down vote on the existing formula. This sounds like you're opening yourself up to all kinds of amendments.
If I could, this is two different things. This is to add the language around capital lease.
Yeah,
So that's the first article that we'd have at the meeting. The second article is to prove the exact same formula.
okay.
So I don't disagree with you that some people may be confused, but the first one is putting in capital lease. The second one is, do the voters agree or disagree to keep the same formula?
The only
Okay.
thing that-
So the
that might
apportionment
make it
formula is the second
clearer
thing.
Would be, is it necessary to have that last ADM weight, EV weight in the article? Or can it end at the period after agreements?
Well, you mentioned the table in that article though, so you'd have to change the language there.
What,
It's a really good question, and it's one I kind of like tussled over for a good part of the day, because if you may not recall, but Article 4 of the Articles of Agreement is really two parts. There's the operating expense part, and then right under it, there's the capital expense part. And I was concerned of opening up that whole thing. So that's why I titled it, couple things I did. I titled it Amend Capital Expenses Formula in Articles of Agreement as the title of the warrant article, so it's really clear that that's what we're doing. I thought about putting a phrase or a notation in there, all other warrant articles remain the same, or something like that, but I don't, like, anything you do opens up the door.
Look at it, well, then, the word that is, I think, a trigger in this discussion is formula. Because we're not looking to amend the formula, we're looking to amend or clarify the definition of capital expenses.
Do you think it would be helpful to include Article 4 in its entirety?
No.
Okay.
So
But then
that's
shouldn't
so
the
that's
0
one
and
thing.
100 be underlined
So
as
let's
new?
just stick with that thought, and then I'll jump there next. I think maybe a better title would be
Define.
amend Articles of Agreement to clarify the definition of capital expenses.
Yeah, I like that
Yeah.
better.
Is that
Yeah,
your direction?
I think that speaks to your point and also mine.
And then the same thing in the first sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And therefore, what I'm trying to do is not introduce an amendment that's so broad that now we're talking about more than just the definition, we're talking about formula.
Right.
And I think if we're that specific, and I can like more closely scrutinize how I worded the article itself to make sure, that way it can be the position of moderator, well, that would be outside of the scope of the warrant article, so that's not an allowable amendment, right? What's the scope of the warrant article, the definition of, or how we define capital expenses? That's what I'm trying to accomplish here. I think it would be okay if we were clear to take out the formula at the bottom, since we're not touching that.
Yeah, because as you laid it out here, with the exception of that introduction of the word formula and the numbers on there, was broken into two very specific things. One is working on the definition so that we include lease payments. That's the ultimate outcome that we were seeking initially. And the other is continuation of the existing formula. And if we can narrow it down to those items, I think it supports what you have been teaching us.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I feel comfortable with all of that.
How are you feeling with that track, Drew?
I think that's spot on.
Because you're the one who's going to be ruling if.
Well,
if
it may
So
not be
Liz-
Drew, it might be Liz.
Well, the chances are, as soon as you publish this, and at least one amendment will be forthcoming immediately as a proposed
Right.
for the meeting. So
Right.
yeah.
I'm missing something.
As soon as you say amend articles of agreement, there are those who will be interested in all kinds of interesting amendments to the
Oh,
article.
but you don't have a specific amendment that you know is coming forward?
No,
Okay.
No.
it's
I didn't know if
just,
something had been
Just once we
prompted.
open up to a special meeting and put a warrant out there for
Yes.
amendments to the Articles of Agreement, I guess we could get a petition warrant, right, for a special meeting? Can you do that? Can they do that?
a
Say that
special
again?
meeting
Can
for a
somebody,
special meeting? No,
if
but
you have a special meeting, there's,
No,
nobody can
no.
add.
No,
a
there's no
warrant.
petition
But they
warrant
can
articles
come
for
up
a
with an
special meeting.
amendment.
No.
They can come up with an amendment to what we're trying to do.
exactly. Well,
Okay.
Jim, I would disagree. I mean, a petition article can trigger a special meeting, but that's
It'll be,
off
but
to
it
the
will
side.
be past the date.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to,
Yeah, no,
Wrap my head around all of it, yeah.
Thinking this through out loud, that's the whole reason we're doing it tonight.
right.
Yes.
Jim, can you clarify, amendments to the Articles of Agreement have to be published, printed? So if I were just a regular old citizen and I wanted to propose an amendment, because there is a special meeting happening, what are the requirements that I have? To Drew's point, if someone else says, oh, you wanna make that change? Well, I wanna make this change.
So if the board is calling a special meeting, then it needs to, under your articles of agreement, it needs to ensure that the text of the amendment is actually part of the warrant articles proposing the amendment, and that text of the amendment is published in the newspaper. So
Does a
Just-
community member have a right to submit a petition warrant article during a special meeting, or would it just be for the annual meeting?
just for the annual meeting, there's no petition to add a warrant article to a special meeting warrant. That doesn't exist.
So then the only option that would exist would be a motion to amend
Yes,
the motion in the article.
yes.
But how can that work if in in our Articles of Agreement, it says that the only way to get an amendment is to post it and put it in the
Because-
newspaper 30 days ahead or whatever it
Because if they
is?
were gonna do
How
it
can
in
someone
March,
then
you'd
try
have
to
time.
amend it at a special meeting if it has not been published anywhere?
I know. So to me, I look at it this way.
That was Gina's question.
It's a really good question with a kind of a complicated answer.
Why is there never an
You have the general principle, and help me out here, moderator, because this is your world as much as mine. The general principle that the legislative body at any meeting, special or annual, has the right to discuss and amend warrant articles before it, as long as the amendment is within the subject matter of the warrant article. And it's often referred to as the sort of we call it like the notice rule, but it's basically because you have to put it on the warrant what the subject is, you have to give people notice of what's going to be discussed and debated at the meeting. And if new subject matter is introduced, you haven't properly put the public on notice. So that's the general principle, right? Has to be within the subject matter. There's a second kind of layer here that I would kind of think of under the same general principle that's created by your articles of agreement, which requires the actual text of the amendment to be published in the newspaper. It doesn't mean, however, that once you publish the actual text, that actual text is no longer subject to amendment. As long as its subject matter is on point, and we're talking about amending the text of the articles of agreement that's been published in the newspaper, I think we're okay.
But they have to stick to this article, to this topic. They can possibly make suggestions to tweak what we've
Yes.
put through, but they can't bring up something completely different from a different article.
Correct.
Okay,
Like
For
dissolve,
example, when we,
dissolve a
when
co-op.
Like they
we have
can't-
a special meeting
right,
to amend, when we have had it to amend the apportionment formula,
right.
they can debate and propose to make further amendments to
Sure.
that formula there.
But they can't try to change something else, like decide that we're not gonna have 7th grade anymore, or, right.
That they would have to do independently through a petition warrant article to the
Annual meeting, okay.
Jim, just to clarify my thinking, independent of this special meeting, in a cooperative school district with these articles of agreement, can't a member of the public with enough signatures trigger a special meeting on that article? Their proposed article?
Yes, there's such thing as a petition for a special meeting. I think
Yeah.
it requires 50 or more voters, but I can
Have one
look it up. I
Brookline.
wasn't really
It doesn't
thinking
specifically-
of that, but I believe it's yes, that's not a petition article. It's a petition for a separate special meeting.
Okay.
And I can look that up really
So
quick.
you'll do another bit of
But I-
revision on the, sorry.
No, go ahead. I can do two
So
new ones.
obviously you're gonna eliminate this table, so then you'll take out the language that says, to the table below, right? There's language in there about the table below, so you'll amend that, correct? Since you're not gonna include the table.
No, that has to stay,
Well-
that's part of
Oh, the table below is even further down? It's
yeah,
not there?
that's part of the article that's not getting amended.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Could someone propose an amendment to the first article to include some fraction of operating expenses?
Quick answer to your prior question. It requires the signature of 50 or more registered voters.
Yeah.
Okay. To petition a special meeting, that is not the same as there is no right to put a petition article on a special meeting warrant. Not a thing, not legal, it's not gonna happen. Can you repeat your question? 'Cause
My question was, given the text of the first warrant article as we've discussed, can somebody propose to include in the definition of capital expenses a certain portion of operating expenses?
That wouldn't be legal.
Okay.
Because the statute 195-18, which authorizes the formation, requires you to have a separate formula for operating and a separate formula for capital. And if you were to insert operating onto the capital expenses formula, that would just render all of that, so I don't think that would be lawful.
I didn't think so either, but we need to be clear on that going into this.
There's another option here, which I was thinking about as a, well, no, this I think is actually maybe a better way of going about how we approach the amendment. Rather than saying, here's the amendment with the language and cross out is to say, here's current Article 4, and to amend it by adding the following clause at the end of Article 4, and then add the definition. The problem with that is I've got this first clause where it starts off with the expenses related to the principal and interest of bonds.
You gotta get the bonds
I
out.
got to get that R there. So I'm thinking it'll just say, to see if the school district will vote to amend the Article 4 of the Articles of Agreement to add the following definition of capital expenses. And then I'll put the amendment below with the cross out and the new language below. And I think that'll make it really clear this is just about the definition of capital expenses.
So you're going to have the cross out, but you're going to describe it as an addition
I know.
and a deletion, because you've still got the expenses related to principal and interest of bonds in the addition.
Yeah, I think I just need time with it. I don't know if I like the word add, but I will come up with the right terminology, because it's not accurate.
You're going to get rid of reference to formula.
That's fine. I figured out
Yeah.
how to clean that up in both the definition and the wording.
Yeah.
And now I just have to, I want to be really specific about the words I choose. It's not to add, but I don't also want to wordsmith it here,
Okay.
if that's okay. Because it
That's okay.
says I need some alone time in front of my computer.
You
So,
might
like-
want to include the words definition of capital expenses
Yes.
in the title of the warrant article.
Yeah, it will be Article 1, amend Articles of Agreement to clarify definition of capital expenses.
There you go.
That's the title.
Yes.
And then the body of it will take out to amend, it'll just say to amend Article 4 of the Articles of Agreement, and maybe it just says to clarify definition of capital expenses. Maybe it just literally says that.
So the italicized but not bold under where it says Article 1, that's what you're going to be wordsmithing?
I'm going to wordsmith all of it. I'm going to
But
read
I
it.
mean, so that's not staying as is, because
No.
that's got the formula part.
Yes, yeah. I'm going to rewrite the title and the 2C, and I think I already know what it's. I don't think it's, I think it's pretty straightforward. And I'm going to remove the formula part at the bottom. Since we're not proposing anything related to the formula, I'm going to take that out. And that keeps it clean. If someone wants to petition something else, they can do, theoretically whatever the law allows them to do. But for the purposes of what the board's trying to accomplish, they want to make this a discrete vote on the definition.
And then the second one is,
I just want to say, if Drew is not if this is going to be scheduled at a time when Drew is not the moderator, please schedule time to bring whoever is the moderator fully up to speed on this.
yeah.
Yeah, I will need to talk to whoever the moderator is.
Yep.
And I feel pretty good about that. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Second one?
Second one. For those of you who are not aware, I'm going to check my notes here. In 2021, as a result of, a school district changing its apportionment formula, I don't know if it was you folks or not, but remember in 2000, was it 19?
In 2020, we actually changed our portion formula and added $1.
Added $1, and the reason
moved
we
a
did
dollar.
that
Yeah.
was to basically trigger what I call a period of repose, or like a pause period of 5 years during which you can't amend that formula. It seems it's just really kind of like a procedural issue. So the legislature amended the statute to expand the definition of when you could trigger that period by not actually having to change the apportionment formula, but by also when there is an article on the warrant to continue the current formula. So if there's an article, shall we continue the current formula, and that article passes, it's good for 5 years. You're locked in for 5 years before any change can happen. Does everybody understand? We're good? So if you put an article on here, as I wrote here under number 2, operating expenses apportionment formula and articles of agreement, that's just the title. Article 2, continue current, and I put operating expenses. That's why I said this is a draft. I don't know.
I think you should take that out.
Yeah, okay.
It should just say apportionment formula. That's my opinion.
Because we want to codify both aspects.
Yeah, because our formula has 2 pieces, so just,
Is formulae, this is for the student members of the board, is formulae the plural of formula?
Well,
Yes.
you can do it for.
Drew, I was trying to be Socratic. We have student members who don't want to be put on the spot.
I dropped AP Lit.
Okay. Could you just look that up?
Formulae and formulas are both acceptable.
Formulae or formulas?
Are both acceptable.
Okay.
Only to some.
What would you like it to be? Because I'm going to put one or the other, because I want to say there are two formula. There's the operating and capital. So,
Based on the audience, I'd put the S, but
Yeah, I'd probably put
I'd
the
put
S.
the S.
S. I think it's probably wise to put the S.
because, and yeah,
Look
okay.
at, our students are agreeing. They,
I like
for
the
them,
S.
All right,
S is
okay,
plural.
cool.
Yeah,
It may-
yeah.
people may not like it, but they'll understand it.
It's fine. Thank you for your input.
Anytime.
So we will, it'll say continue current apportionment formulas in article, I might change that because that
So
sounds.
is it really two formulas, or is it two elements of one formula?
Oh, gosh.
I think Darlene would say it's two elements of one formula.
Well, you have time
like
to ask her.
I could text her, yeah. I mean, we'll ask her. But
What
I
do you think,
believe,
Tom?
I think of it as one formula.
We refer to it as the formula.
Good answer.
Yeah,
The apportionment formula is blah, 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 plus blah, blah, blah.
yeah, I think it's always presented in as one formula. Right, yeah.
There's literally no other, just for the record, other school, co-op school board in New Hampshire which would ever get into this kind of lively debate about the question. I mean, it's amazing that
Welcome to
I'm actually
41.
looking that up.
I
But-
can't
I
imagine
believe
how-
it, I believe it's
41.
approached as one, as a
I
single
can't imagine how
formula. But I
Conval
could be
ever
wrong.
comes down to an apportionment formula.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I've seen the word method. I mean, there's, just give me a second. I want to,
I think.
School boarding's a winter sport around here.
it's really fun.
Kind of like those esports.
Yeah.
Hold on.
We have a club.
I know.
There's one member.
Club for what?
Yeah. Esports.
Oh,
Mr. Scott. He runs it.
I did send a
What we
text
need
to
is the Latin
the
club
budget
right
committee
now.
chair, but I'm not sure where she is and if she's available. So we can figure that out, though. I mean, we can give you feedback offline on that. That's pretty easy to do. We can check in with budget committee chair and with Kelly too.
Yeah, what I'm probably going to say is this is
Right.
the legal answer because I looked up the law.
Okay.
It would say continue current method of apportioning capital and operating expenses in the Articles of Agreement.
I like that.
Love it.
Because I also like to have the right answer, so
Perfect.
so the language will say, to see if the school district will vote to continue the current method of apportioning capital and so that's the issue. What if they want to cross out capital and only lock in operating? Or what if they want to cross out?
You could say, continue the current method of apportionment.
Of apportioning expenses. All expenses.
So you need to wordsmith that a little bit too.
But
Yes.
Here's the deal, and the way you're trying to write it, it's a yes or no.
That's
If
what we
the
want.
answer is yes, it's continued. If the answer is no, we're not going to determine what the change is at that point. in
Yeah,
time.
but I also don't want to put capital and operating and have someone cross out capital and
Right.
say, we're going to continue operating, but not the capital.
Right.
Because then it's like, so we want to have the yes, no be, again, it's a yes, no on both, and that's really the only vote that we're trying to
Yeah, 'cause
like
it's-
put.
if-
But I thought they couldn't amend this, so it had to be yes or no.
They can't amend it to
Give a different formula.
give a different formula or otherwise
They can-
modify the Articles of
You
Agreement.
can modify the language.
They could
They could
tweak the
modify
language.
In front of 'em, yeah.
That's what, yeah.
But that would then leave us without a
That would be a different one.
apportionment of
So-
one of the elements.
So current apportionment method for the expenses of the school district.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say that again.
To
Method.
continue the current apportionment method for the expenses of the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District.
I got it. I like that better. All I know now, what I learned from that is to not put both up there. I can
Yeah,
wordsmith
'cause we
that.
really
That's
need
pretty
this to be
straightforward.
We need this to be a yes or no.
I get it.
And if it's a no, then we have to move forward
Hey,
with something else.
remember what I led with, which was, this is like a draft, right? So
You do
I don't,
believe that?
I don't know what you guys are gonna want exactly, so I think we ended up at a good place.
Mm-hmm.
I know what to do.
Even
Um,
though it's Holly, though, that it still kicks the can at least a year.
Well, it's, yeah, I mean, unless somebody comes
Nope, they
To the-
can't.
March meeting with,
They can't introduce that at March meeting.
If it gets voted no, to
Like-
continue, they could reintroduce it. It's only if it's voted
But
yes.
they can't do it at our next March meeting because they won't have met the timeline for a hearing and all the things required to address apportionment.
Can I have that chart?
Well, if they could front load it.
Yeah.
It's conceivable, it's not very easy, but if they provided their petition article prior to the
Yes,
annual
yes,
meeting,
Yes. Yes.
and then it failed at the special meeting,
Yeah. But you're saying if it did, even if they did that, if it passed at the special meeting, that would supersede it?
Yeah.
yes, yeah. But they could still, if it doesn't pass at the special meeting, then I guess we could have a problem in March. But I do believe if it doesn't pass, this board will start a committee in February, like, we'll form a committee to look at it. So I don't think we'll have a problem in March.
If you would receive an article, is it the district's responsibility to pay for the advertisement or the individuals who are sponsoring the article?
Yes. I think that's what we've done in the past. If you receive a petition timing becomes an issue, but if you receive a petition and it's not submitted in time to publish it prior to the public hearing date, then it's not valid.
Correct, but who pays the expense?
If it is on time.
I don't have an answer for that, really.
In the
I mean,
past, the district
last
has paid us.
time, we had an article as proposed by the school board, and then there were 2 amendments to it that were proposed at the meeting.
I think Andy's just asking a general question about
Right.
petition
No
warrant
amendment
articles
shall
and,
be
In the
effective.
past,
and when.
I'm quite confident that the district has paid the advertising costs, so.
I mean, I don't know, because here's what
The
this,
Articles of Agreement?
here's what the Articles of Agreement say.
Cause we had one last,
It says, no amendment to these articles shall be considered except at an annual meeting of the co-op, and unless the text of such amendment is included in an appropriate article in the warrant, it shall be the duty of the board to hold a public hearing concerning the adoption of any amendment at least 10 days before such annual meeting or special meeting, and to cause notice of such hearing and the text of the proposed amendment to be published in a newspaper or papers having general circulation in the district at least 14 days before such hearing. So it shall be the duty of the board, how I read that, to hold a public hearing and to cause notice of the hearing to be published in the newspaper.
Okay.
So I
last
think-
year we had the one to, change the, majority size for any changes to the Articles of Agreement. And I'm assuming that was published by us.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because it could end up, if it's at our meeting, I have no problem. If it's a special meeting, I just wanted to make sure it's still our expense.
All I
It
will,
wouldn't be at the special meeting, that's the thing. It would be,
But it could be at another special meeting and 50 people sign it.
oh, I see what you're saying, but that's a different
yeah,
case.
and what I'll say is I spent quite a bit of time on the calendaring thing. It's not as easy as it looks because it's not, notice is not before the special meeting, it's before the public hearing.
Right.
So it sets up the timeline, it's kind of like it's pretty spread out, like it builds time in for notice, public hearing.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's like the most confusing thing ever, but
I don't think it's possible to petition a meeting between this special meeting and the annual meeting. There is a certain window,
Right.
as I recall, for a petition meeting that cannot happen certain number of days before an annual meeting. So
Yeah, I can look
they would
at
have to do it after annual meeting.
you're not, I think you're right.
So many.
I don't know the
IRCs
answer on the top of my head.
According to our budget committee chairperson, it's one formula.
No, it's one method.
Yeah, it's one method of apportionment. It's all the
But
same.
it's
It's
one
the same
formula.
thing. I think calling it one formula and one method
Yep,
is synonymous.
we're good. Thank you so
Thank you, Jim.
much.
Am I dismissed from class?
Absolutely. You
Thanks.
get to take
Thanks,
two
Jim.
friends with you.
Yeah. Bye.
Just kidding.
Have a
thought
good,
so.
have a good night.
Good night.
Gotta
Thank
get
you
out of
much,
here
thank you,
next
Jim.
up.
Yep.
Thank you so much for laying that all out for us. I think that clarifies it very well. So now we know that we need to vote on this in December, so that needs to go on the agenda. Great. Thank you, Drew, for your feedback and for everything that you do. Appreciate it.
I hope you beat that cold.
Yes.
Oh, I do too. I may sit for a while and just watch, because it's fun.
I ain't talking about that.
Okay, so, moving forward, we're now up to the principals' reports, but what we generally would like to do, I think, before we do the principals' reports is,
for candy.
let the students, I know you haven't really been here before, but generally, we love to hear from you guys about, like, what's going on with the schools, if you're ready, if you'd rather hear the principal reports first, so that you get a sense of what they say, but you're ready to go?
We have our list.
Okay, great. So, and then just so you know, you are always welcome to stay for our entire meeting, give us feedback. You know, we're gonna talk about your program of studies and class sizes and all
How
sorts
many
of
students
really,
are left in AP Lit?
yes, all sorts of really
Not
interesting
me.
things.
-1.
So
And-
many interesting things. However, after your report, you are also welcome to head home. So, so Margaret and Ashley, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, starting off with our Halloween assembly, it was really good, and we also had a door decorating contest with our new advisories. We had 3 winners. My advisory actually ended up winning. And we also, with the Halloween assembly, we had a mac and cheese and cereal drive for the food shelter. And whoever won got to then go down and paint pumpkins with 2nd graders. So that was cool. And then we also had our Veterans Day Assembly. Thank you to the Homefront Club for really organizing that, and it was really special. And the juniors, actually, do you want to talk about the taping Grisone?
Oh yeah, we did a fundraiser at the Student Class Council for juniors. We taped Grisone to the wall, and surprisingly, we made a lot of money. It's just a little fun thing, just to get the grades excited to be in school, I guess. And after we heard about like what happened to the Bush twins, we did end up donating that money to them. But it was still a really good fundraiser, and I'm glad we were able to donate that to them.
Great.
We also had the Veterans in the Classroom event for the junior civics class, as well as their field trip to the State House. And for sports, we had our girls soccer team win their 2nd Division II state title with an undefeated season, back-to-back, as well as girls field hockey. Shout out Ashley Disco, member of the team, who also won the state championship. And actually, that was the first ever in the program's history.
That's excellent.
And also, we have our Hollis Brookline High School Theaters Department, and they're coming up with their 12 Angry Jurors, as well as the upcoming guitar night in December.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, ladies. That's great. Thanks. All of those things sound great, but I really need to hear what it means when you tape it. Tape Mr. Grissom.
Same thing. Dial back. Give us a little more info on taping
Yeah,
Grisone to the wall.
so like pretty much it was like $1 per like piece of tape, and we like taped them to like the gym wall. I think he was like standing on a chair to begin with. I wasn't like there for it, if I'm being honest, but we just kept taping him. I guess like once we figured it was good enough, we took the chair away, and he stuck to the wall surprisingly.
He said it was really hot.
What kind of tape was it?
Duct
Yeah,
tape.
no, there's gotta be photo-proof,
I'm sure
right?
there are pictures. There are definitely
No,
pictures.
I was taking a math test during this time, and unfortunately could not participate.
I did
bummer.
see it. I was right there.
That's great.
We covered up the nice clothes with some garbage bags so that the tape
Oh.
didn't.
Okay. What kind of tape did they use?
Probably duct
Duct
tape.
tape.
Duct
Wait,
tape.
duct tape
Yeah.
was supposed to look like he was being mummified
Mummified.
a little bit.
Gotcha.
Yep, Halloween.
Weird that he didn't
See, I
include
think
it in
it'd be better
his
if it
order.
was bigger.
Oh,
Apparently he left it out of his.
he didn't take like a selfie on the wall.
No, I guess not.
Yeah,
Like, he was
so-
he was taped. He couldn't take a selfie. His arms were taped. Well, thank you very much. That's great. Thanks a lot. It sounds like good things are happening. It's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun actually.
That's great.
These last 2 months, we've been busy.
And so you have a junior, Ashley, you're a junior, and Margaret, you're a senior. Exciting times, exciting times.
Yes.
thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
and
you
you're
for having
welcome
us.
to stay.
And thank you for the candy.
As long as Mrs. Whalen's here, there's candy. Thank you.
Would you like your memo back?
You can leave it here. We'll take care of it.
Okay.
All right, moving on. We will now have the middle school principal's report. Mr. West.
I'm gonna do Brian's, athletics report.
Thanks, ladies.
And then I'll do mine, and then kick things over to Ms. Zeller, as I
Okay.
think she's got a lengthier report than me.
Yeah.
So our athletics report, HBHS field hockey and HBMS volleyball finished the season as champions. Our HBMS volleyball team finished undefeated, so we are getting a little nervous for our student versus staff game in December, as they are a very strong team, and we look forward to seeing how they do at the high school. HBHS girls soccer, it looks like they made it to the finals.
And they just won.
And they just won.
Mhm.
So 3 champions this fall, which is incredible. HBHS boys soccer and girls volleyball hosted the first round, and they won, but they were bested in next round against the higher seeded teams. Boys and girls cross country competed well in their Division II championship. May Butler was the only runner to qualify for the Meet of Champions. Overall, it was a great season. The field hockey championship girls soccer team is slated to bow Division II state finals on Friday, November 8th, which it looks like has already occurred. Boys and girls, skipping down, HBHS cheerleading team will be representing the Cavaliers in their state spirit championship at Pickerton on Sunday, November 11th, which
Quick
also
note on
occurred.
that.
Fifth, please.
We had, I think, 3 last-minute injuries to the team, like significant can't perform injuries, and the team could have opted out, and they did not. They did, the way it was said is they ended the season on the mat.
All right, well,
And they
that's
got
good.
big kudos for doing that from the entire meet.
That's great.
Moving down to the middle school girls volleyball again championship. Boys and girls soccer teams both had really great season. The girls team finished undefeated number 1 seed, but unfortunately it fell to an Amherst team in the semifinals here on the turf field. Boys soccer team fell in the same round to a very talented bow team. Boys and girls cross country. Boys cross country finished 6th, while the girls team finished 4th in the Tri-County Championship. And field hockey team showed great improvement overall in the fall. Winter sports started yesterday.
Wow. In the middle school and the high school?
Just the middle school,
Middle school,
sorry.
okay.
Started yesterday. And some recent hiring of coaches. Any questions on Brian's athletic report?
I just extend congratulations not only to all those winning teams. That's pretty incredible, though. I'm really impressed by the fact that we have our first ever field hockey championship, and to have the girls volleyball middle school girls volleyball team making a state championship, and the girls soccer team 2 years in a row. That's pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
Go young women.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. And then, but also congratulations to all our fall athletes who sounded like they participated and were great sports and did a great job in many areas. So that's great. Also, at this point, it is now 7 o'clock, and I am closing public input.
Moving on to the
Yes.
principal's report.
I'm just too busy congratulating people to move on. Yes, moving on to the principal's report.
So we wrapped up Red Ribbon Week at the end of October. There is a picture from our local police department's drone. We actually had a student planning to bring theirs in, but we learned a little bit about the laws with drones. So we pumped the brakes there, and our SRO was very willing and happy to share their drone, which was a pretty incredible setup. I won't speak too much about it, but it was really great to have them bring it in, and we took some great pictures. We can certainly improve our red ribbon, but for 400 middle schoolers, I think we did okay.
Looks great. Looks like a red ribbon to me.
Yeah, thank you. The theme for Red Ribbon Week was Fly into Healthy Choices. The theme was the Life is a Movie, Film Drug Free, but we had a Fly into Healthy Choices bulletin board that students made notes on, pledging their not doing drugs on the leaves. It's down the hall. If you get a chance, feel free to check it out. It's a nice little addition to our main hallway. We have Rock Solid Anti-Bullying Month. There are a few samples from our 7th grade PSA posters. Our 8th graders created commercials, which were comical. and we have some future actors and actresses, I think, that will do great at the high school, and as well as our drama club this year. But I think it was a great overall month for our anti-bullying, and I think there were some great conversations had during Rock. Our Veterans Day Assembly was another great success. Thank you to our veterans for coming in. Mr. Bruce Moran read Ode Glory, which every year I find a little more powerful as I get older and have children of my own. It was a really great reading, and Mr. Chris Lucier presented his collection of flags. And it seems like his flag collection grows every year, and his passion and excitement for being a veteran and just our country really comes through in his presentation. So thank you to both of those gentlemen. I did include the class size report, which I'm happy to go through, and then I squeezed in some costume contest fun that we had at the end of the month as well.
Before we go to class sizes, yeah?
Can I just add something to his report?
Sure.
So we have been utilizing a state-sponsored One Trusted Adult program where kids can find one trusted adult, whether it's in school or outside, as sort of like a mentor. And Patrick brought in the author, Brooklyn Rainey, for some training early on to start the school year, and she was so impressed by our staff here at the middle school with their level of excitement, enthusiasm, and interest in working with our middle schoolers, and very impressed with our leadership team that she has asked Patrick to review her next book before it goes to publication.
Oh, wow. That's incredible, Patrick. Congratulations. That's really nice. That's terrific.
Thank you, Gina.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. That's great.
The title is Middle Schools Adult Advocates. For
that's
successful
great.
middle schools adult advocates.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
That's good. Wow, that's nice. So are there any comments on the bulk of the report before we talk about class sizes? I mean, besides the regular comments. A lot of great things are happening at the middle school, and I did think it looked like a red ribbon, so, and
Thank you.
it looks great, so. And I, again, thanks to the veterans who came in and made that day for the kids and taught them how important that is, so
We
that's great.
do plan to have them come back a week or two before the 8th grade DC trip, as that's been a tradition. And,
Great.
So we'll keep that going.
That's terrific. So, I guess we can move on to, are there any other comments on the board report? We can move on to the class size. Go ahead, Patrick. You can lead us through your class size presentation.
Mine's pretty straightforward compared to the high school, especially for our core classes, English, math, science, social studies, because most of our students take those classes and are just kind of assigned to those classes. And again, our scheduling is more prescribed than what the high school offers. So, and last spring, I gave you the request breakdown, which I think is linked on one of the bottom tabs at the very end, request for board meeting 515. And then I built in each section with math, English, science, social studies, and a breakdown for each of those actual class sizes based on those requests, the targeted offer sections, and then the average predicted size. So as you go tab to tab, the first one I'm in is math, so math 7. Underneath the actual class size sections, those are the 6 sections with each of the total class sizes. So there's math 7 pre-algebra, math 7 algebra, math 8, all of our math offerings there. I can certainly go through number by number, but I don't think we'd have fun with that.
No.
Can someone just remind me, is algebra in 7th grade the default, or is that a special?
That's considered an advanced math course.
It is, okay. And when would it, when a non-advanced time for it, would that be 8th grade, or is that
Ninth
freshman
grade.
year? Okay. I'm looking at that's the one that's really heavily loaded. Is it different at 7th than in 8th?
Yeah.
No, ideally no. I think things are a little bit in the sense of what the curriculum is, because we have to squeeze in certain curriculum from higher levels into 7th grade algebra, because they don't have that pre-algebra.
So it is what I was wondering is whether seventh and eighth algebra could be combined to level off the.
No, seventh grade algebra is off team, and it's a little bit different. So in order to get into seventh grade algebra, you had to, in fifth grade, pass the math placement test. So then in sixth grade, you do sixth grade and seventh grade together. So it's a slightly different exposure for entering Algebra 1. Another advanced track would be pre-algebra in grade 7, which is really 7th and 8th grade combined.
Okay.
But our grade 7 algebra students technically don't have 8th grade math.
Okay.
But so that teacher is
They
weaving
taught a little
in.
differently? Okay, I was
Yeah.
just looking to see if there was a way to level out that spike in that one section.
So seventh grade algebra students don't really get pre-algebra at that point.
So they have all the pre-algebra standards as those are 6th and 7th grade math.
Do we look at the outcome?
Yes. So if you
of,
recall,
people taking 7th versus 8th versus 9th?
yep. So remember Lance Flamino shared his analysis. So our first cohort that started 7th grade algebra through this accelerated grade 6 math program, they're currently seniors. And we've looked at all of the students and where they've fallen through. Some students have transferred out. A couple of students self-selected out. But if you look at so last year they took AP Calculus. And so our juniors in AP Calculus compared to our seniors in AP Calculus ever so slightly outscored our seniors. Very ever so slightly. But it shows me that they were appropriately placed and appropriately challenged along the way. And, good results. One thing that Lance looked at is those prompts we offered to our 7th grade algebra students, our 8th grade algebra students, and our 9th grade algebra students to try to understand their methodology for solving problems and whether or not the coexistence of physical science in 9th grade helped or not to their approach to problem solving. So I think we are in a pretty good place. There's always room for improvement, but what we wanted to avoid was what we saw about 15, 20 years ago, which was that plateau in 10th grade where they went too fast and didn't have that depth of knowledge, and we're not quite seeing that. So.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, English, Patrick?
Yep, same thing, a breakdown of our English classes, where at the bottom it starts to get into our reading offerings. Those students who take reading still have access to English, but those are the more individualized reading classes at the bottom of the English tab.
Do we still offer reading as an alternative to foreign language?
Yes.
So, and it's interesting that we have 45 students in 7th grade taking reading and only 13 in 8th. So next year we should be seeing around that same number because kids don't generally, it's a 2-year program. So, right, like when they choose reading in 7th grade, they stay in reading in 8th grade. They don't usually switch to language.
Our goal really is to try and get students into the world language.
Oh, is
path.
it? That didn't used to be. So
Yeah,
it
I
used to be
think
like an
that's been-
alternative to taking a language. So
And it still is.
Right.
But I think we're really trying to target students' reading levels
Okay.
and get them up to grade level or a place where they will be successful at the high school. And eventually students really do want to kind of be in the world language path.
right. So a kid who's in reading 7th grade can take French 1 can take French in 8th grade?
So it's 7th grade French or 8th grade French or 7th grade Spanish and 8th grade Spanish. So yes, they wouldn't have had that first year, but because of the way it's taught,
They can do
where
it.
it's an immersion program,
Okay,
yes.
so that's new then. I feel like that's new. That wasn't true when my kids went through here, but
Yeah.
I'm old.
So
my kids
years and
graduated
years
early.
ago, there was some level of encouragement of students to take an advanced reading class, but we didn't really. So there were some students in a class that was called reading that spent a lot of time reading, and then there was another group of students in another reading class, same title, that really worked on like Read 180 and trying to bring
Right.
the reading level up. But they were titled the same class. So we really tried to focus the reading class on those who needed targeted reading
Okay.
instruction, so we've shifted that
So I
slightly.
think it's a little bit of a shift.
So we
Yeah.
don't, that was what I was wondering, 'cause I had kids who were actually in it.
Yeah, I
So
told my
they-
kids not to take language, and I made
so
them
they-
take reading, so.
So we don't
yeah.
have
Yeah,
the reading alternatives are more intended to deal with people who might have some struggles.
Yeah, more targeted.
Okay, so
intervention.
we don't have
Okay,
a,
that's interesting.
we don't have a reading program for people who are actually advanced readers.
If we had a student that would prefer to take reading over world language, we would certainly support that. And I think because of our class sizes of reading, our reading teachers do a nice job of meeting their students where they're at.
So you think you could have both in the both categories of students in the same class?
Depending on the size, yeah.
it's just definitely a little bit of a shift for those of us whose kids went through like 10 years ago. So, I mean, we're old. That's why we need some younger board members.
Yourself.
Sorry. Go ahead, Patrick. Science? It's what here all night, so.
That one's as straightforward as it gets.
Yep, it is.
We
Yep,
try and
two
keep-
sciences, yep.
We
Is
did.
the class size limited at all by the facility, right, at this point? Or is that just a number?
It's because we have 10, we have 2 teachers, so, I mean,
Okay,
like,
no, I just remember the
Yeah.
discussion that that our class sizes, our science classes are supposedly undersized in the middle school right now.
Well, it's based on the total number of students, and you divide by the 10 sections, really.
So-
But our labs are limited to 24 students, regardless of policy.
Okay, so we're not having a problem
Not
based
currently.
on size at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Social studies, same as science. The specials, which are computer,
Yeah, they're
tech
all the
ed, health, and art, those are just broken down in the notes as quarter 1 and quarter 2 sizes. But again, pretty straightforward with just dividing the sections into 10. PE, again, straightforward. And visual performing arts and world language are all pretty much the same. World language, sorry, is just based off of requests. And depending on how many student requests we get for 7th or 8th grade, just changes those target sections to either 3 or 2 for 7th or 8th grade respectively.
Do we have any staff who cross over French and Spanish?
Not teaching,
Okay.
but they are pretty well versed with
No, I just
supporting.
didn't know if, because of the disparity, I didn't know.
Nope, we have 2 Spanish and 1 French.
great. All right. Thank you, Patrick. Are there any other comments or questions? Looks good to me. I mean, it really is dependent on how many kids are in the building. I mean, it's the middle school.
Yeah.
It's a pretty prescribed
Yes.
plan, so that's great. Thank you very much. Moving on, Amanda is going to cover our principal's report. And Tim is busy with some pretty cool things himself, so.
So this is, I'm reading from Tim's submitted report. Some of the things were already covered by our student representatives nicely. We do have an adjustment that is being proposed for our British Isles trip, which is next year, and that is based on an overwhelming number of requests. So they are looking to increase the number of students traveling to the British Isles to a maximum of 60 students. So that's kind of exciting that we have so many students interested in travel. But this wouldn't impact the cost of the trip to individual students, and that's important to understand. Our college and career fair was wildly successful. We had lots of students visiting, lots of different representatives from college. Our school counseling department did a really nice job of organizing that. It included colleges from across the country, career and technical schools, and all 5 branches of the military, as well as lots of post-secondary community programs. So it really was an inclusive after high school fair more than just your traditional college fair, which was very, very popular with students. Of course, after that, we're always looking to improve the experience for everyone, so we're taking feedback about how the students access the day and how we can make it even more successful next year. Our student representatives mentioned a lot of our Halloween-based activities, including the food drive, but Tim's report includes some nice pictures of the event where our students took a bus down to the elementary school, and they came back and it was really fun to see our high school kids kind of had that elementary school glow to them, and it's like they all wanted to run out for recess again. It was kind of fun to see them put themselves back in that place of being elementary students where you do fun stuff like this. So I'm hoping that that kind of reward for school participation up at the high school we can institute in other ways. Part of Tim's report, but also kind of embedded in our program of studies, is a bit of a proposal to shift a little bit of our AP computer science, not really shift it, but add an option for students. So there were some attachments included that articulate the reasoning behind that and what that might look like. Essentially, we'd like to add AP Computer Science principles to our already offered AP Computer Science A. So they're they're very closely titled, so it's easy to cross them, but they're two different courses. So the rationale, the reasoning for those is included in the attachments. We can talk about it now, we can talk about it when we do program studies, doesn't matter.
We'll do it during program studies.
Kind of figured. And then we also have our course enrollment sizes that Tim included in his report with all sorts of interesting numbers and things to look at. So I didn't know.
Yeah, I'll lead you through it. So first of all, are there any questions on the basic report? Just sounds like great things are happening.
Weren't any pictures of Tim taped to a wall?
Yeah, really.
I will share that news with him.
That's the big one.
We'd
Let
like
him
that.
know he left
Yeah.
had a big missing piece of his report.
You don't
And
think
then
it's got anything to do with why he's not here?
Yeah, no. And then I'd like to just bump to the foreign travel PDF, the question about the request. Is this something that needs board approval, or is it just information for us?
You had approved the field trip.
Yeah.
Tim was concerned because it is basically doubled,
Right,
and he just wanted the board to be aware.
okay,
Nothing about the trip in terms of days, time away from school, any of that is changing. It's just he felt compelled to share it because it was so popular
right.
that to be double the number of kids going.
So
Do we have enough chaperones?
I'm guessing.
Yeah, the chaperones was the next question, because it
Correct,
doesn't,
they'll increase.
they didn't list any additional chaperones, but I assume they'll be getting more chaperones.
They'll
Right.
break it
There's a
down to
list.
the required
Okay.
numbers.
I'm thinking they need school board.
I was gonna say, it
Yeah.
sounds like
Okay.
they're volunteer.
I'll let Tim know.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Seasoned travelers.
Yeah, yeah.
Been to Edinburgh.
Yes, Tom.
Retired superintendents.
Tom,
There we go.
I think Tom might actually have a question.
I was contacted by a parent. I don't know that it was specifically about this trip, but we talk about the availability of funding for students who don't have the means to cover it. And the feedback that that parent got was that there really wasn't a lot of help available, that there might be some scholarships they could apply to outside the school. They might be able to write some essays or something to qualify for some money. Just the fact that this one's the $4,400, that's the cost of a year's tuition at NCC. Things like this. I don't know whether we are promoting this as a critical element of curriculum. If we are, I think we're doing a disservice to some of our population. If we're not, and this is just kind of a nice thing, I'd rather see it really characterized as an extracurricular opportunity as opposed to a curriculum item, because that's a very expensive, it's a very expensive trip, and I know that at this cost, it is a hardship, and I have received input from at least one parent that the ability to get assistance with it is not readily available.
I would encourage you to encourage the parent to reach out to the SAU,
Okay.
because we have not historically denied kids opportunities based on funding. But I'm not sure that say a rank and file teacher always knows the different resources we have to go to.
Yeah, this went to one of the organizing staff members.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that they would necessarily know. I mean,
Okay.
DC is a little different animal, because
Yeah, but it wasn't DC, yeah, it was,
No, but I just mean,
Yeah.
I know from the DC trip, there are those people in this community that would not want to see a child denied an opportunity. I'm just saying our teachers may not be aware of that, and that's something that Gina and I typically would kind of figure out a way for that to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Great, so you don't need to vote on that, though? This is
No,
not, that was
no.
just an
Yep.
informational thing, okay, great. Sounds good, okay. Moving forward, let's talk about class sizes next, and then we'll do AP Computer Science mixed in with Program of Studies. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So, you have a lot more in terms of class sizes, so are you prepared to do this? Are you okay? Yeah?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know exactly what you would inquire typically about this, so I can put some things out there and
Right.
then you can drive it from there
Okay.
if that's what
Okay.
makes you comfortable.
Yeah, that sounds
So,
good.
the two significant things, the two significant things to look for are the projected class size that we had in the spring of last year, and then the average section enrollment from this fall. We know that when we build our schedule, we build it in an idealized format through the PowerSchool formula that magically puts in all the recommendations and comes up with ideal section sizes, but the reality of it depends on students' selection and what they opt for when pieces of their schedule may not work and when there are conflicts. So the average section enrollment doesn't always exactly match. In my opinion, this is pretty close. These numbers, if you look at that average section enrollment versus the projected class size, there was a pretty good amount of work done to keep those consistent, and in my opinion, the work paid off. The sections look like we hoped they would look when we built the schedule, and that's what you're going for, is that you met the needs to the best of your ability, putting together both the way PowerSchool works and the human effort to tweak little pieces of it without blowing the whole thing up, which is difficult. It's not an easy task. After that, the last column shows individual section enrollments, and there are times when that seems to show a range of disparity, very small and very large in the same section, same course, but we're really looking at the average of those things, because some factors that are out of our control come into those, like being at the beginning or end of the day and carrying a lot of seniors means we'll have seniors who find their magic way out of those courses so they can leave school early or come late. I think, again, this year that's been held to a minimum because of careful planning and thought put into when we offered particular courses. So I feel like there's a little bit less of that effect in this year's schedule. Some of the smallest numbers come into play with some of our specially designed courses that need smaller numbers for instruction to be delivered well. So a few of those tiny numbers that look really small that might make one say that's a whole section of learning, that's what's needed for the students in that section to receive the instructional support that they need for that subject matter.
So it's like popular reading, fundamental English, those are classes that are designed for specific
Exactly.
types of students. Yeah.
I think we ran Chemistry Essentials this year, and we don't always run that. That has a pretty small population in it, but that's a good thing for those courses, and we work to keep those courses at those numbers so those students receive access to that material with the right kind of instruction and support. I didn't know if there were, do you want me to go?
You don't have to go through all of them
Okay.
because it's extensive and it's part of our responsibility to review this ahead of time. And if we have any questions or comments, we can certainly bring that up to you. I think, one of the things I pay attention to is sort of new courses that are that are new. So like, I think our anthropology class is new, is that right?
Yep.
And it seemed like there was, healthy requests, so it seemed like it pretty much stayed on target, a little bit lower, but
Right.
That's good. And I always check journalism and yearbook. That's one of the things I do because we made that change a few years ago, and to be honest, I'm still sad that we only have a half a year of journalism. Especially, I'm going to say it, especially because I really feel like in today's day and age, it would be really valuable for more and more people to understand what real journalism is. So that's kind of, we have a semester class, but.
On the anthropology, is that a year-long, I mean, are they, is semester one different from semester two?
No.
It's just semester class.
And I'm just sort of surprised with only 4 people in the second semester. Was that, do you think that was a scheduling conflict or an interest?
I think it was scheduling. I think it was conflicting with some other options. It's a new option, so if you're given, you can take this or this, you'll probably go for the thing that's a more known quantity. And as a senior, electives are, they're up for grabs as to whether you really need to take them. Is your credit load already met? If you're looking at second semester as a senior and maybe you don't need that half a credit.
So what you looked at is like people
Yeah, I'm
drop.
just wondering.
And the
if-
opposite is true though, Tom. So we might have seniors who are in a year-long class and maybe it's not going all so well for them. And so we need a place to put them for second semester. So we often will maintain a smaller section size for a second semester senior elective. So there's a place to put students.
Yeah,
I didn't
you
know
might
if
see that,
if-
you might
if
see that
it
number change.
freed up
Yep.
a teacher to do something that was overloaded perhaps, but I understand what you're saying, it makes sense.
Are there any other questions on class sizes?
Do we have teachers identified for all the classes that are shown here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the schedule as it's set
No,
now.
I just, well.
I hope we do,
it's
otherwise
for-
I've been missing something.
I
in
didn't know if we were
classroom.
gonna need to hire to meet this need.
No.
Are there any other questions or comments on this? Just 2 things for me. One, I'm gonna again compliment, I like this new format. We've done this now 2 years in a row where we see projected spring classes so we can see the requests. And then we also see what the plan was, and then we see the reality, the actuals, if you will. I think it's really important for us to understand that because decisions are made based on those requests. And then you have projections, and then you have actuals, and you can't control when kids drop. You just can't. And then the second thing I'm gonna say is I think maybe it's just something that you don't have yet. I love to see the CTE numbers as well. So if we could see those at some future date, that would be great. And again, the same sort of process, like requests. I've gotten a lot of questions from folks out there about how we make decisions based on the fact that we're, not using Milford anymore or whatever. And so it's good for us to have that data because people do ask us about it. So
That's
great.
a good point.
Thank
Never
you.
thought of that.
Any other questions on this?
I will just add that we don't do a lot of the decision make for CTE.
Right.
It's the receiving schools that either admit or don't admit our students.
But it's a good refresher for us
Yep.
to see those numbers and have that
100%.
refresh because when I get questions about CT, I'm not super familiar with it, so it's helpful to have that information. So, but again, I do really love this format. It's great.
Gina, for CT, would we be able though to see requests versus placements?
We've never shown that, but I don't see why we wouldn't be able to pull that data.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
if we're seeing that we're having problems getting support from our partner school, it'd be good to know that.
Absolutely.
We can go over with pitchforks and stuff.
Yeah. Storm the castle. Okay. Thank you very much. And then moving forward, we'll just go right into the next part of our meeting, which was supposed to start at 7:20, and we're at 7:30, which is the program of study. So we're going to go right into that, but you can, and then address the CCS principals proposal at the same time. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay.
So you have a highlights document for the program of studies. The computer science and engineering is under specific department updates, but it's kind of its own special moment. Our current computer science, AP Computer Science A instructor brought this proposal forward because he is working with both our computer science and our engineering departments, and he really wanted to see the student population that's served kind of create some bridges between that are more fluid as to the students who are accessing those different courses instead of feeling like you're a computer science kid and you do that or you're an engineering kid. He saw a lot of crossover, so he wanted to create some more pathways through that coursework. So his proposal was to add what is called AP Computer Science Principles. And it covers slightly different material than AP Computer Science A. It's a different course. You can take both and you're not being redundant in your work. So he felt pretty strongly that this would benefit the students in that program. And there's a chart included that shows the different pathways that map through it. It's I don't know if you call it a chart or a table, but you'll notice lots of repeats in that table, which means you can kind of start in multiple places and go through it in multiple pathways. The start of our entire program he sees as being engineering technologies, and then there are a couple different ways to go from there. AP Computer Science Principles is like an introductory level course. In terms of APs, it's one that's highly accessible for a lot of students. So he thinks it could function to get more students actually involved in engineering who may not have initially thought of themselves that way, but the AP allure draws them in. And then within our engineering and computer science departments, there are lots of opportunities for college credit or college credit connected courses. So this fit into that thought and framework of a lot of the students who are entering the engineering department. He has some of the specific details about what differentiates the courses here. He says that this computer science principles class is good for students who may not be ready for what he calls the abstraction of AP Computer Science A. So he would hope to draw students in there first, and then maybe those students would then go on to do AP Computer Science A once they feel themselves computer science thinkers. We also have seen a little bit of an increase in the students who are just testing the waters of engineering through engineering technologies, and he wanted a place for the kids who are interested from that first bite to maybe advance not directly into the heart of engineering, but take some time in computer science and then come back into engineering. So his thought was really to open up access to a lot of different STEM interested students to the program. This would pair with a little bit of a shift in the courses we offer through Project Lead the Way. There's one course in particular that he feels is a little redundant at this point based on what we're offering, and that is Introduction to Engineering Design. The curriculum has shifted in such a way that it's not really meeting student needs in the Project Lead the Way kind of pathway that they put together. So he kind of sees this as, well, we don't need that one anymore, and it's not really getting a strong enrollment and continuation in the Project Lead the Way program. This is another college credit tied offering that might meet a slightly different need and still bring students into.
And this is we have one teacher who teaches all of these classes, because a lot of these are semester classes, right? But the AP classes are year long, right?
Most of these are year-long classes. The engineering technologies is our semester class.
Okay.
That one can be offered. Students can take the 2 semesters. That is when you asked a question before about whether the semesters were different. That course has different curriculum for the semesters.
Okay.
So a student can take one semester, can take the other semester, or can take both.
Mhm.
And if you take both, you can sign up for Project Lead the Way credit.
Okay.
So he's really trying to create a very flexible program, which I'm
Is
kind
is the engineering technologies class potential college credit class?
That's the one that's the 2, it's called Engineering Technologies, but if you take both semesters
Yeah.
of it, you can take the Project Lead the Way exam for EE.
RIT.
You can take RIT credit, but the name of it under that purview this is the one that, it's a different course when you take it for your Project Lead the Way credit. It is Engineering Essentials. So if you take both semesters of Engineering Technologies and you take the end of year course exam for Engineering Essentials, you can get RIT credit through Project Lead the Way. I mean, complicated, but.
It's sort of aside from what he's got, what's mapped out here, and I like what's mapped out in the whole thing. The one thing I see is that set of classes and the one that he's talking about removing are the ones that have some elements of the mechanical side, physics side. What I might suggest considering in this whole framework where you're mapping it out is to perhaps link in AP Physics for people who are interested in the engineering side but not exclusively the electronics or computer side, because I think that there's an opportunity for synergy to bring the AP Physics into this whole picture. maybe not even only AP Physics, but physics in general, because at the college level, physics and mechanics classes are often interchangeable. So getting a physics AP credit or a physics background could potentially provide the same level of opportunity for a student who wanted to go into engineering but was more on the mechanical side rather than the electrical side.
Interesting.
That is an interesting thought. And we've had some shifts in AP Physics, so we're settling there, and it might be something
Yeah,
we
I
can talk
think
about.
the AP Physics teacher would love to work together with his former student, the engineering teacher.
I didn't want to speak so enthusiastically. but
This
she
is
was
really exciting because what it does is it does what we've talked about. It helps the student carry through and see a path rather than an a la carte menu that they have to guess what do I want.
Yeah, I love the
Okay.
fact that it's all mapped out like that. That's really helpful, and I think Tom has a good point of like throwing that AP Physics in there too, so people know that they're headed in that direction. It's great.
Yeah.
So, I don't get a sense from any. Is there? We will be voting on the program of studies in a month, and so if anybody has a problem with this proposal, now would be the time to let the administration know if there's concerns about dropping the one class or adding the AP class.
Yeah, I just had another question actually. So with the discussion of dropping the intro to engineering design, we do have some students who are a little AP shy.
Yes.
And so we now have a map where AP is an option in sort of every one of those paths. Has there been any discussion about the possibility of bringing in another class that is not an AP class but an engineering class?
There are some paths through that don't include AP. It's all you can get through. I think you can pack a solid 3 years in without touching an AP. And since a lot of students don't dabble in this as freshmen, if they do, they take a semester as one of their semester electives, and then sophomore year they're looking for more. Yeah, it's on our minds. The engineering technologies is designed for that reason to be. Do you think this is your framework? And he has a really close eye on the students in these programs, and he often will suggest based on what he understands about their level of interest, and are they a little bit timid about this? Okay, then this is the right next course for you, without scaring them away. So he works pretty hard with the students who he knows are interested to find the right pathway through for them so that they won't get to something that's a little much as their second step after taking the engineering technologies class.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think that there are some kids who might want to do that solid 4 years who never want to do an AP class. So it would be awesome if we had. It may not be possible, with the project lead away. I think it's great that students have the opportunity to take the dual credit courses and not necessarily an AP, they don't want to
Exactly.
take the AP, not take the AP.
Right.
So,
I think at that point, we're limited by the fact that we have one staff member to teach this. So, I think if we see, and we have to just continue to pay attention to numbers and interests and all of that, but if we see extreme interest in that, then we'd have to make other decisions in terms of staffing. But I appreciate the fact that he is the person who's throwing this out there and is paying attention to his students and is like, I assume he has his finger on the pulse of what they're looking for, and so I'm gonna trust that moving forward, so.
Yeah, me too.
I think that the feedback to the administration is that I don't think you're gonna get any pushback on this from, except for maybe comments that keep made. Anyone else? Right, and then just the program of studies, the draft and the highlights would be great.
A few things, I think of it as the kind of the front of the program of studies. That's where we explain a lot of our program offerings in a generalized sense. Those are at the top of the page here. Throughout the program studies in past years, courses that were Project Lead the Way, dual enrollment, or AP had a little special note after each course explaining what that meant and how that connected to college credit. We thought it would be a little more powerful to group those up at the front of the program studies under the heading Options for Earning College Credit at HB. That seems to be quite the focus for a lot of high school students these days, is there a way for me to earn some college credit while I'm still in high school? So we grouped them so people could see that we have a couple different clustered options for that, one of which is AP, of course, one of which is Project Lead the Way. This overlaps a bit with what we call dual enrollment. In the state of New Hampshire, that has shifted to being called early college, but because we have a couple different options for earning college credit that way, we kept with the term dual enrollment to really capture all of that. Because the early college is a specific community college of New Hampshire initiative, and so we didn't want to misconstrue that by calling everything early college when some of it falls under a bigger umbrella. So those three different options for earning college credit have explanations now. They're embedded in the first pages of the program studies. If you wanted page references, I of course thought after the fact, if you wanted to take a note on here and look for this, that's on page 12 of the program of studies, is that new section that outlines different ways to earn college credit. And I think a lot of parents are looking for that too these days. Our course selection needed a little bit of updating. That's on page 16, and that's about how overrides work. There's a lot of confusion that surrounds that every year when we have course selection processes, so we tidied up that language and made it clear how an override should be used. And it can't take the place of taking the course that you need to take. It can look at the recommendations that surround that include sometimes some grade recommendations and some levels and indicators of success, but an override form can be used to address concerns about those specific aspects. It can't take the place of taking the prerequisite course. So you have to take pre-calculus before you take calculus. But we can talk about what looks like success in that course when students are looking to challenge themselves, as a lot of our students are. New Hampshire Scholars has a lovely graphic that they've been using for the past couple of years. It's simplified in how it presents the program, so we took that straight off of their website and put it in our program of studies because it more clearly explains. We used to have some very complicated bullet lists, some different pathways that kind of don't apply in this case. We made it very clear that it's about core requirements. That's on page 10. So that's been updated to reflect the current state of the program. And then in the past, all we had was a list of NCAA approved courses. On the very last pages of our program of studies, we've added an indicator icon. If you remember, we still have a New Hampshire Scholars indicator. It's a little symbol. Now there's also an NCAA indicator next to courses that fall under that umbrella. We just wanted to clarify, we're always looking to make it easier to use the program of studies because it's quite a document. Specific departments. We talked about computer science and engineering. That's on page 22. English, just had a few things to change based on the first year of offering business writing. We updated the description of that. I talked to a couple students. They're enjoying that class a great deal. They find it very applicable to their current experience. So the teacher is using that feedback to create a course description that matches what has happened to the course or what needs to happen next after our first year. Unfortunately, we did have to lose one of our opportunities to offer college credit, and that's through college composition. It's a bit complicated to explain why. Our previous instructor was affiliated with a community college, and with that, this is an old thing that happened a while ago, and nobody has the memory of exactly how it came about, but we were allowed to offer that class to 10th graders because that's when writing is in our curriculum. This course was designed, our writing course was designed a little bit off of this idea of a college composition course, just at a high school appropriate level. And what happened since is that person has since retired. And when they were looking over the courses we offered and when we offered them, we were basically told by the system that can't be a 10th grade course. We can't support that. So it was a gift of grace for a long time that just doesn't exist because we don't have the same affiliation with the institution that we used to through that person, through that staff member. So we explored ideas about other English electives we might be able to offer through early college, and nothing at this point fits. We had a world literature course for a little while, but they're not running that the same way they were. And one might think our advanced writing option is a senior elective, but our curriculum so closely matches the college composition that would be like kids taking a course as a sophomore and then taking pretty much the same course with extra depth of work as a senior. It's just too redundant. So we couldn't offer it just as a senior elective even though it seems like that's where it would fit. So we're still in conversation with the representatives to see if there's another English offering, because it would be nice to have something outside of math that offers that kind of early college credit. So we're hoping something comes up. Math specifically, kind of connected to that course selection process, we wanted to look over the prerequisites. Math is always one where we're looking for the most successful pathway for students, and sometimes that a student's feeling of success and a parent's feeling of success and a teacher's feeling of success are hard to triangulate into what's really the best decision. So we tried to word our prerequisites in ways that would show that we really want kids to be successful, so they feel like they're not facing this beast of a math class that's going to hold them down all year, while still the opportunity to challenge oneself if that's what you're looking for. Some students don't mind getting the B or the C. They feel like they've challenged themselves to different coursework, and they deserve that opportunity. So the math prerequisites, some of the wording was changed to indicate what seems to be the most successful approach to that course in terms of what kind of grade did you receive. And the wording was tricky for some. Some that was embedded in to say, getting a C in this previous class indicates good success, and some it's actually part of the prerequisite saying you should have a B- or better to take this course. But the wording of our override process allows students to look at that and have a conversation and make a choice based on that. If they want to challenge themselves, the opportunity is there. We always work with prerequisites every year to try and figure out what gives students the best chance of feeling like they're challenging themselves and being successful at the same time. So we looked at math to try and figure some of that out this year.
Great.
Oh, and there's one more, honors band. So if you remember, we had a whole conversation about how band and choir and honors jazz and concert all fit together. And this is honestly, I was remembering that conversation when this came up. This is what I anticipated would happen. We don't have a critical mass of students to run a separate honors concert band. It's just not there, and it would really throw a lot of kids' schedules off. So what Mr. Rogers has proposed is something that's done in a lot of schools, and that is offering honors credit in the concert band for doing specific extra work that shows a greater depth of knowledge as a musician. There are different elements to the finals and midterm. There are different performance expectations, different musical knowledge that's expected of those students that they could then earn honors credit for that. It's much like, we didn't run it this year, but the Senior Quest had an honors option for Senior Quest. So it's this idea for honors options within the regular section of concert band, so that those kids don't have to select out of it, but there's a capacity for them to earn honors credit for higher level musicianship, which some of our students are incredibly musical with their
Right.
talents. So I think that's it.
Questions, Tom?
It's funny that you mentioned Senior Quest, because that was what I was looking for. I don't see it in the schedule. So we don't have it this year?
We did not run it this year, but it's offered. It's still in our program of studies. It's still being offered.
I know it, but that was my thing.
Yeah.
I thought that had been tailing off. Does it, with everything else that we've got, does it still fit and make sense?
I don't have an answer.
Yeah, it definitely filled a need at a certain point, but with what I see being done with the program, the number of opportunities that are there, the fact that we had challenges with it from the outset between the regular and the honors aspects of it, I'm wondering if it fades off into the sunset.
So basically, we offered it and we didn't have any takers. We didn't have enough takers.
From this, I could pull the number. We did have some requests, but it wasn't enough to pull together and run a section this year.
Did we have it last year? Did we run? I thought last year we didn't run it either.
No, I feel like we did.
I
I feel like this was the first year we haven't run it in a while. I think it was a small section, but I feel like we ran it.
Do you want to give it one more shot?
probably.
I would hate to see it go away. I think it's a really great opportunity for students to do some experience-based learning.
I think it could be, I'm not sure it actually manifested the way it was.
I think it was great when we had it. I think the kids who were involved in it did some really amazing
It
things.
started out really strong.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know.
It really thrives off of a fostered individual interest, and students who are pursuing something that they're passionate about and interested in enough to drive themselves through research and developing a project idea. Right now, I think a lot of the focus overall in high school is more of a pathways focus, where we're building very interest-centered programs for them to go into. So an engineering student has so many opportunities to explore that maybe they don't have their own project lined up and going yet, but we have so many pathways through exploration of that topic. We have
Well, we have it in music, we have it now in, or we're trying to cultivate it in the language arts. I mean, I think that some of the things that have evolved, and yes, there has to be students that have that drive for it, but it also has to have the right faculty that want to embrace that and really foster it. Just question whether we've got the environment that makes that an appropriate.
I would hate to see it go away right now, because we've started advisory, and I feel like with this concept of one trusted adult and kids feeling a little bit more connected to someone in the community of, people, they might actually, I don't know, the conversations
Yeah.
could start where teachers might actually say, hey, you've got some interest, like you might want to think about Senior Quest. So I think I'd love to see it play it. I mean, it doesn't hurt us to offer it, and obviously we're not gonna schedule it unless we have a critical,
Well,
a good number of students, so.
Yeah,
I think it's a great thing to keep
I like your idea, Holly. I'd like to see strong advocates for it coming out of the staff. Because we did have it, we had that originally.
And I think there also can be an element of nervousness with students, because it's a very abstract kind of concept, what a senior
Yeah.
quest could be. And I think that students get more excited about something like this when they see other students present. What have they done? What's the outcome? And so if you have a year where there aren't students doing that, then kids are going to be a little bit less likely or a little more inhibited about doing it. And it would be awesome if there was a way to show students what other students have done, and if there was more talk about it, and more faculty talking about it, and sort of more excitement around it, I think you'd get more students excited about the prospect.
I wonder also, though, if, so we started offering Project Startup, which is different, but also sort of an abstract experience where you work off of an idea. And we also have just ELOs where we can offer extended learning opportunities that don't require taking Senior Quest. So we have multiple ways to sort of have that varied experience, and I wonder if that has watered down the specific interest in the course. I don't know, but it's just what I'm thinking.
That's what I was thinking, is we have some very specific exploration opportunities, like ELOs, that I think aren't as abstract, that are based in some very real, tangible things that are already in place that they can access and plug into without needing to frame their own thinking and come up with their own project pathway through this. And that's a little more appealing to very, very busy, focused, intense students.
Well, thank you so much for that presentation. Are there any other questions on the program of studies? I believe we will be voting on it. Do we vote on it next month?
Next month, yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. Are the principals needed for anything?
No, I was hoping you were going to.
So you guys are welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go home.
Bye.
Not to go backwards, sorry. I did give Andy and Gina a heads up. We are slowly kind of working on our own middle school program of studies, because we don't want to be setting up the high school for any issues that we do down here, and just trying to align a little bit better.
Okay.
Probably will be next year, but just wanted to put that out there.
Well, we just love program of studies here at the
I-
school
I can
board,
tell,
so.
I just feel left out.
Something I meant to say earlier, I didn't, the college fair thing, I saw postings from staff from other schools thanking HB for putting it on because they thought it was just a great presentation and the options available, so they were really appreciative to have the opportunity to send their people over here to do it.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you guys. Thanks so much. On to co-op round 2, right? The budget. Okay.
In your board packet, you had been provided up to round 2. As you know, we go through 4 rounds of
Thanks,
new
guys.
items. In your packet, you have the new item sheets as well as the Excel spreadsheets. Just for board members or any community member who's looking at the packet, everything from the new items is incorporated into the Excel spreadsheet. But the Excel spreadsheet has the ongoing items like snow plowing and those type of things that wouldn't be in new items. When you're looking at the overall budget, some of the big drivers, we have a group of students moving from the elementary schools to the co-op that have require educational services, so that is part of it. We have an increase in health insurance. We have a teacher's contractors is included in the Excel spreadsheet, and a significant piece that is going to be looked at from 2 different points is the middle school boiler. So in the new items, you have $950,000 allocated for a boiler. But when we go to facilities in a couple minutes, we're going to talk about a potential lease or bond proposal, and that boiler is included there. Obviously, if that were to pass at the annual meeting, we would make a motion to remove the boiler from the budget. Okay? So, as always, we start with the academics. In this year's budget, there is a lot around some classroom renovations, greenhouse, those type of things. A couple other significant items, we're looking at textbooks for math at the middle school. It's their time in the cycle. And at the high school, we're looking at AP Psychology and French 1 and 2. So that it's a very solid year for budgeting of academics, but there's nothing, what I would say, overwhelmingly significant or new to that. Tom?
I'm just sort of curious, are we an outlier for actually using textbooks? Because I hear so many presentations, they talk about textbooks, if anyone's still using them. I didn't know.
The textbook, whether you go online or the textbook, is basically the same course. If you buy the physical textbook, most times you get the online program as well. Our students really appreciate the non-online.
Oh, I like it. I'm just curious. Is it rare these days?
I think we all came through this moving to technology thinking that textbooks were going to go down in price. But the reality is that the textbook online and the textbook that I purchased are the same dollar amount. So.
So do you get both? Like, do you buy the textbook,
he
do you
said,
get the
yeah.
online for the most part?
Go ahead.
Yeah, yes and no. To buy it online only, it's about the same price as if you bought the actual textbook. If you buy the actual textbook, which, by the way, sometimes are coming as loose leaf pages. Don't get me started on that ridiculousness. But if you buy the textbook, then there's a small additional fee for the online version. So depending on what's budgeted and how we utilize the book, sometimes we go with that small additional so that there's the textbook to actually look at, but then maybe homework online so we're not moving heavy textbooks around.
Thank you. Going to the next page, we have a number of staff stipends. These are all coming from the stipend committee. Some of them are only there because of some of our new programs. One would be the advisory leadership team. The other would be the NEASC accreditation is coming up. So we traditionally have stipend 2 individuals to become the chairs of that committee. Most of the other stipends you see there have been going on for quite some time. The other one that we've had in place, but now it's part of the law, is the chemical hygiene safety stipend. and that's broken down by time, so that, as you can see, the high school is a little over 5,000, middle school is 2,000, and then each of our elementary schools are also being serviced by the chemical hygiene person, so that we're in compliance K to 12 and across the SAU.
You'll see a policy on that today.
Yep. Going into special ed, I'd like to publicly thank Lauren for all her efforts, because you'll see that we're asking for a BCBA to be split between the high school and middle school. We're asking for an IDDD teacher, but those two positions will allow us to drop the next program. So by doing that, we're actually going to save $38,445 by bringing that program totally under our jurisdiction. NEC did a fantastic job while we had them, but we believe that by owning these individuals, we can service some more children.
Can you just tell us what a BCBA is?
Yes. I can't remember, do you remember the exact?
I think it's board certified behavioral analysis.
Beautiful.
Analyst, okay.
That should, yeah. They are somebody who's a specialist who's going to work with behavior issues
Okay.
For children on the autism spectrum is the majority of the time.
And IDD, it's another one of those,
Is
is a
it-
teacher that specializes
is
in
in-
working with students
with
in that
significant-
population or
Yeah.
with those, that kind of,
Yep.
okay.
So we actually see a savings in that, and Lauren has, as we know, continued from Amy to Bob and now Lauren, bringing programs in-house that just allow us to avoid costs. This actually brings us a savings to our in-house program, so we're really thankful for that. Tim has requested some materials for advisory and the self-contained program. The computer replacement cycle, as you may recall, we had Carol Tyler, our director, come to us a couple of years ago and put forth a plan, and this is just the regular cycle of that plan, so we don't see any spikes or dips really. It's pretty much a constant broken down year over year. Carol has informed me we're getting to the point, last summer we actually sold back some equipment and made a few dollars. But now, because we're getting to a more regular cycle, the equipment we will be selling back will have more value, and we'll start to see some offset to these costs as well. The shared services for software, this is just trying to do as much as we possibly can to strengthen our security. We are constantly getting pinged and phishing emails and all of that, which most companies are, but Gina and I attended a seminar specifically around this, and we learned that schools are really targeted much more than you can imagine, because the data we have that is like priceless is data for young students, because there would be a number of years before those students would ever be expected to be out there as a identity. Meaning that if I took your social security number at age 2, how many parents are going to know, is it gone? And we have 3-year-olds in our program. So we have become, across state, across the nation, areas where we are targeted much more. And again, I thank Logan and Carol and all of our IT people at the building for everything they do to ensure our safety. It will also, those safety purchases will also help us better track our assets, from our servers to our computers to everything that we have. Next, we have a number of items there in athletics. Basically regular replacement cycle, field hockey goals, wrestling mats. A number of those things you may see move to the athletic trust as we go into round 3 and round 4, but they most likely will be funded some way in this budget unless we were to have to make significant cuts.
The ones that you've zeroed out, have they already been moved to someplace else, or are you not going to do them?
They've been delayed. And again, just, again, more for community members, but round 1 is just tell me everything you think you could use. Round 2, we have that discussions about can it be delayed, those type of things. And so you'll see the cross goals come back probably next year or the year after. When we get through the budget process, we actually save this information And hopefully we see items repeated, because if they're not repeated, it says, well, did we really need them? You know, so it's a nice check and balance on what we're getting for requests. Safety and compliance issues, there is where you see the boiler, $950,000. We're looking to continue moving forward with our school guard glass windows. That is the replacement window, that makes it much more difficult for anybody who is trying to break in. When you turn the page to the high school, we have a fire pump replacement, which is at its end of life. We have some what we call blind spots on our outside of our buildings that we'd like to rectify. We are looking at some speed bump tables. We have a problem on occasion. We kind of go through peaks and valleys with some of our students and those visiting the property coming in a little fast. But we typically go through very good periods, and then it's like we all forget, especially after we have a vacation. And then we're reminded. The facilities maintenance trusts, we have some window replacements at the middle school, which is phase 3. We're looking at the padding in the gym, debating if that is actually time for that, or maybe will be delayed. We have a big item in the paving of the front of the building here. Electrical panel replacement, and some flooring in the 7th and 8th grade wing.
Is the roof section pulled out because of the facilities work?
The roof section is,
Or because of
At the high school, you
is
mean?
in the maintenance trust.
No, the middle school.
Oh,
Yes,
It's in the
but,
maintenance
but it's in the maintenance trust.
Okay.
So we'll go that when we come to it. At the high school, we have some classroom flooring, some deck cleaning and things of that nature, and then some repaving near the kitchen and the front driveway. So right now, everything included, we would have a differential of $2,644,879 for a 9% increase. If you just take out the boiler, that brings us down to 5.7 increase. So I think, you know, the boiler is going to be the big swing item. And I think after we finished round 3 and into round 4, you're probably going to see that come in under 5, probably closer to, you know, somewhere in the 4.5%, give or take. And that will affect the overall warrant, because we still, we have finished negotiations. We're waiting for ratification by HESER. That'll probably happen in the next few days, and then we'll be discussing that in our December meeting. So there'll be that being added. In the maintenance expendable trust, to go to Tom's point, as the board knows, we're saving to do the retrofit for the high school elevator. We have our final section of high school roof. So that'll be phase 10 of 10, and the whole high school roof will be replaced. And we have our first major section of the middle school roof for $150,000, and that is scheduled to be done in phases. Just when you go to the Excel spreadsheet, it's about 17 pages long. On the 15th page, at the bottom, you would find a line item called 10-2400-899-0304. That's where you would find every new item going in. So you'll see the middle school is like 1.3 million, because 950,000 of that is the boiler. You'll see the high school is about 369,000, because that's just their regular, what I'll say, request at this point. Kelly will be meeting with the budget committee in the coming days, and that will lead to further discussion and further probably reductions. I will tell you, in year 11 of doing this, we're right where we should be for round 2.
excellent. I have a question.
Yep.
This facilities complex, that was $250,000 that has been pulled off, which is fine. Was that potentially like a concession stand up at the
Yes.
turf field? Okay,
Yes.
because just, that's hit, Facebook, there's some I mean, there's been some social media chatter about
Yep.
that being something that people are interested in seeing happen and different ways to go about that. So I just want to be able to, if people ask, be able to say that it's on our radar, but it's not for this year.
Right, and what we'd like to do with that, we'd like to accomplish two things. One would be a facilities storage, so for our equipment, on one level. And the second level, because the way the land is tiered there, the second level would be concessions with bathroom.
Do we have water there? We'd have to get
We'd
water.
have to get one.
We'd have to get water up there, but I would suggest looking at what I would call seasonal water. So we could run it from the high school up to the concessions, and then have it shut down each season, similar to what you do for your,
You blow it out, yeah.
yeah, blow it out.
Like
Because
irrigation.
again, once we hit now until probably mid-April, we're not gonna be using that facility for concessions. So, and to me, that would be a relatively cost-effective way to get water to the property.
Great. Are there any other questions on this?
The one thing that I was curious about, I'm not sure that it's what was in there as being pulled out for the shared trades person, but, you know, we had this discussion, unfortunately you were stuck in hurricane land, but, when Gina presented the information at SAU, talked about pulling that out. And I understand all the reason behind it, however, I also remember the presentations that said that putting that money in could easily more than pay for itself by reducing the external expenditures for some of those services. And I don't know how the manipulation takes place, but it would be unfortunate to drop that because of optics if it really is going to create a better functioning and lower cost arrangement within our system.
And that's a great point, and thank you for bringing that up, because Gina filled me in on that discussion. And I think once we get guidance from BudCom, we'll look and see where we are, because that might be one of those pieces where I ask them to give us relief from guidance. And then what I would do if the co-op funded it, and then we needed to use those services in Hollis or Brookline, would do the rental of that person's salary. It's not a cheap salary. You're looking, it's almost similar to an administrator. So that's my caution, but I really wanna see where we go with guidance from BudCom first.
Okay.
Cause if I keep something in, and then it just has to come out because of guidance, that concerns me.
Yeah, do we have any quantification of budgeted areas that would likely be reduced if we had those services?
I can get more specifics for you, but I would tell you, plumbing and electrical would be the two right off the top of my head.
But do we know how much we spend on that?
I will have to get that for you,
Okay.
but I think that's a good question, because I think
that,
it's.
that's the way to
Yep.
do it.
Yep, okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. It's always I know it's an intensive process, so we appreciate it all. Moving on to the facilities update.
In your
Is
board-
this you? Is this Rob? Is it you?
Well, I'm gonna take it, and then Tom, Rob, and Gina are gonna jump in whenever I need help. We have a title page here that Lance has constructed from our discussions, and I'm not gonna read that to you. I'm gonna start with the first chart, Hollis Brookline Middle School recommendations, which is page 2. Those are the items plus solar that we considered extensively, as well as some other items that didn't even make it to this round.
So solar's in here?
Solar's
Not
not
in
in there,
here.
but solar was heavily discussed, and I'll kind of touch base in a couple minutes on that. So, as I outlined, you have a boiler that is at the end of life and needs to happen. That's why it's both in the budget and potentially as lease/bond proposal, whichever the committee decides. And then we have the granting the rebate and the energy savings. We have LED lighting there. LED lighting rebates will be going away in 2 years. So if you look at the cost, the rebate would be $55,000 and the annual energy savings would be $28,000. So the energy savings are annual, the rebates are a one-time. The upgrade to the HVAC controls is $665,000. Add mechanical ventilation with dehumidification is $550,000. Upgrade the 1994 unit vent area to ERV with dehumidification. That's the big expense of $2,101,200. Upgrade HRU units 1 and 2, which are $727,000. Replace the units that were put in 2002 for $850,000, and then replace MPR cafeteria ventilation system for $400,000. So that, when we started working, originally, we were somewhere probably in the range of $10 to $15 million. After multiple meetings and multiple discussions with committee members, we arrived at what I would call a point of $6,541,200 that were all going to be further analyzed. Lance was kind enough to put together a package for us. First one is the boilers with photos and an explanation. Then you have the explanation for the LED lighting, what the HVAC controls are. In number 4, which is add mechanical ventilation to HBMS gym, I'd like to make one clarification. The second last sentence says if the project were to move forward with no dehumidification. The word no should be there before dehumidification. All right? That was an oversight that we caught in the reading. It'll be corrected because this will be coming back again in December. So this is not the last time you'll see this proposal. There'll be some slight adjustments to some things we've identified, but overall it'll stay the same.
It's not actually a savings though, it's a reduction.
Right. Yeah. Then, number 5 is the upgrade to the 1994 unit ventilator area to an energy recovery ventilator. And as I said, that's the most expensive piece of this. And many of our present heating units are becoming difficult to provide instruction because of the noise level as they get older. They are not as performing as well as they used to. Lance provided you a map so you could see all the areas that would be identified, would be supplied with new ductwork for the new units. The number 6, which is upgrade the HRU numbers 1 and 2, he shows you those are older units on the roof, and then he has identified again with highlights the areas that would be impacted by those 2 rooftop units. Replacing existing HVAC units installed in 2002. That says items 8 and 9. When we first started, we used to have items 8 and 9. And then as things got cut, that now addresses items 5 and 6. So that'll be corrected for the next round. And then replace the cafeteria multi-purpose room ventilation for $400,000, which takes us to the final chart on what is my last page. And as a committee, we began to further discuss the expense of the project and wanted to bring it in so that it would be cost neutral with the bond that is going away. The committee then decided that between the energy savings and the cost of the bond, they still wanted a differential between what was coming off the books and what was going on the books. So to get to that goal, we eliminated items 7 and 8. which were to replace the 2002 units for $850,000 and replace the MPR cafeteria ventilation for $400,000. That brings the proposal that the Facilities Committee is recommending to $5,291,200 with grants and rebates of one time of $85,000 and a energy savings on an annual basis of $53,570. Between now and December, we'll do more work on identifying the variety of bonds and leases that are available so the board can look at what the payment would be. We would be comparing that payment to the bond that is coming off. And as an administration, making a recommendation that the board can choose to move forward with if they believe it's in the best interest of the district. And I'd be happy to take any questions or allow Tom or Rob or Gina to jump in if there's any clarification of anything I said.
The only thing I would add, and this is, thank you, Andy, this is how you kind of let it off and helped us. Those two that were being taken off, 7 and 8, were chosen because they explicitly do not impact classroom space. So we prioritized all the things that involve student spaces.
The other piece in our discussion, I do believe if enrollment continues to go in the trend we're seeing in the elementary schools, we may have to do something here at the middle school. And those two were identified to be done at the time of that potential renovation or expansion.
So the gym is still gonna get some ventilation, right? That was one of the,
Yes.
Yeah,
that's,
so
that's number 4, right?
one thing we talked about at the high school when we did the project a few years ago, we didn't do the entire building. We tried to be strategic about it and understand that opening doors and stuff would allow our work in targeted areas to expand beyond that. The same approach was here. So this library space wouldn't be touched. It does have an air conditioning. It is aging, but there's no urgency. The gym does not have ventilation. There's just, we can open a hole. And that's the only ability. So that really needed to be addressed. That is expensive and we could.
Literally louvers to the outside.
Yeah,
Right,
no, I still can
yeah.
see it on the picture.
That
Yeah.
is very loud when you open them. So you're either freezing because you're next to them or it's stifling because you're far away from them. You know, it would be great to have that dehumidification in the MPR. That is where students eat. But during COVID, they also ate in the gym. So if it was one of those really warm days, they could eat in the gym with the dehumidification. So just really trying to be strategic. How do you not over spend, but still maintain a comfortable learning and working environment?
And many of these systems complement one another. So it's probably not the best way to look at each item as separate things, because each one complements the other, and this system as a whole brings that big change and a level of savings and things like that. And one of the other things is the lighting. We're getting to the end of getting grants, and it's kind of like these things have been available for many years, and they're getting to the point where, if you didn't act within this time, you kind of missed the boat. So we really need to get the lighting.
Now or never kind of thing.
It's a now or never, and I would say that the return on investment on the lighting alone is probably the shortest out of any one of these things. I know when we did it in the lower schools, it was literally a little over 2 years. It was a no-brainer to do it.
I just want,
Well done.
yeah, I just want to thank you, yeah. I mean, go ahead, Krista, you go first.
No, I just think it's very well done. It really lays it all out. It made it very interesting. It's easy to understand. I was dreading reading it because I was thinking it was going to be something that I was like, oh my God, I don't understand it, and I'm not going to be able to talk to people about it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case at all. It's very well done, and appreciate it.
I
all the
personally
work,
find
but-
HVAC like enthralling. Like this is just like, to me, digging into an HVAC system is just like the
nothing like it.
best. And so
There's
I
nothing like
just
it.
want to thank you for allowing me to not be on your committee because I really wanted to. But no, honestly, it's
I
really
think the biggest thing we were trying to meet is the net zero,
yeah.
is to not inflate the budget or the tax impact, and if possible, be under net zero.
But
So,
when I know you're gonna talk about it, but don't close your thought process yet, because the solar piece is a big thing about it, because moving to some of these systems really pays high dividends when you start having low cost renewable electrical source.
yes,
Right.
that's when
And
these
we have
systems
that ability
really
to add
complement
that on.
Well,
one another.
there's more to it than that.
Just to touch base on the solar, we looked at two different things. We looked at what I'll call approximately a 3-acre parcel at the high school and doing a solar field. And we also considered the roofs of both buildings. As we know, the high school roof will be ready to go because it's all been redone. The middle school roof is starting. We believe that from just a cost, value and return, that going with the two roofs at the beginning would be the most prudent piece down the road. Because with the potential growth of our school system, we didn't want to necessarily take 3 acres of land that we own and convert it to solar and then be looking and saying, no, we need a parcel of land. So the committee went in depth in that. I think to Tom's point, this is all designed to be hooked into solar and to reap those benefits as well. And the other piece, we also did a study because we went to a solar field. We could target buildings that would be eligible to use the reimbursement from the solar. So obviously the co-op buildings would be priority, but if we were producing excess solar, we could then identify other either school buildings and offset costs or town buildings and offset costs. So there is a bang for your buck with solar. We just felt that this was our priority list right now because a solar field was probably good, would probably add about $3 million to this, and it just.
I thought,
Yeah, the
that
roof-
we were gonna come forward with a second bond proposal this year for rooftop solar, because what Mike was saying is that with, current day funding sources, it's net zero cost.
And there's the potential for that. I think that's what Gina was gonna speak to. It's just, we are still trying to get through that between, everything that's going on in the SAU, between the budget and, as you may know, we have an enrollment committee in Hollis, looking at a variety of things. Probably gonna arrive at, a warrant article for engineering and design study, because their enrollment just continues to grow, and if you've looked around town, if there's room for a house, it seems like one's going in. Brookline is discussing a infrastructure piece to look at their boilers and things like that, so it's just trying to balance all the proposals and keep ourselves focused on the one we're supposed to be at, I think.
But why would, okay, I don't know if you wanna talk about it, but I'm just, the way that I thought we left the last meeting was that we were definitely coming through with proposals to this board for 2 warrant articles. One that you've presented here,
Yep.
which essentially has tax level, keeps the tax impact level as the bond drops off. And the other for the solar, which has 0 tax impact because the mechanism of funding, it is completely offset by the savings in electricity.
Yeah.
I don't,
So I
The
think
only
what,
thing is that my understanding, to that, in addition, is that there needed to be some assessment to the roof loading.
Yes.
So that's pending.
Right.
So that's going to steer roof versus,
That was the other issue. So the solar field, another concern was, Eversource said that the size of it required basically them to build a structure that we were going to have to,
A new substation almost.
yeah, to foot the bill for. So that added another $1 million for them to have a fancy building, if you will. So then we looked at the rooftop, and middle school and high school. Do you want both? Do you want one? And at that point, it was, where do we want to actually move forward with permits, because it's going to cost money. We're not going to just ask for everything and continue to ask questions. So we were looking at the structural integrity of the roof and if it could hold the rooftop
the extra
solar.
weight and the ballast that they have to
Correct.
add to the
Yep,
roof.
absolutely.
You're
so
still investigating.
Still investigating
Yeah, we're
that.
still investigating. I think the upside of a roof mounted system is that it's, to my mind, it's significantly cheaper than a field roof, than a field terrestrial install. And the roof versions will be on our side of the meter, what we call our side of the meter. So what we're consuming is being generated by the system and delivered right there. If it's out in a field, you're on the street side of the meter, so you're actually supplying the line, and you're not actually supplying the need of the actual buildings. But eventually it gets there, right?
Right.
I mean, but it's 3 million versus 40% less
The
or
big deal was
thereabouts.
that if we do rooftop, Eversource does not require the increased line capacity that was
Yeah.
over an additional $1 million.
Right. So you bypass all that,
So will
plus
you,
save your acreage.
so will you be able to present by December a sort of a more of a meats and potatoes,
That's my expectation.
version of that bond, that potential warrant article for that, and then as a board, we can decide whether or not we have an appetite to deal with I don't know what other word to use, the politics of having two potential bonds, one being 5.2 million lease bond, I'm sorry, but ask warrant for that, and then potentially having a second one that's more solar focused that could be a few $1 million as well. So I appreciate what you're saying, Andy, that and we want to know, I think I do, I want to know what else is coming up for Hollis, what's coming up on Brookline, because I think even though we are the co-op and we only need to worry about the co-op, I do think it's important for us to keep
One
the
tax base.
taxpayers in mind and what's going on. But on the flip side, I also kind of think it's always good to ask sometimes for something,
Yeah.
put it out there, see what the response is, and if it doesn't pass, we get another shot at it, right? Like, it's not like you can't do, but we have to make sure that we, as a board, focus our priority and our energy and what we say and how we present it to this. Like, we need this.
I think the compelling case here is that these proposals are tax neutral, and they're designed to be. So it's hard to say we don't want to make these improvements because it's going to raise our taxes, because it will not. It's designed not to.
Okay.
If
And
anything,
if it does, we will
potential to lower it.
point that out. Yeah, if anything, it'll lower it.
Just going back to the solar, just a question, because I'm curious. I know that some high schools have done it where they put it in the parking lot and almost made it like a rooftop, like covered parking. Is that like doing it on the roof, or is that more the meter putting it
That
away?
would be on the other side of the
issue is
meter.
That would be on the other side.
Yeah,
Okay.
plus you
The
got,
issue is the size, what we were proposing doing on ground-based, across the threshold where the current wiring
Okay.
doesn't support it. One of the things that Andy keeps reminding us of before he runs away is that within the SAU, there are a lot of potential opportunities, and if downstream there's a community pull to move to renewables at a greater level, we can look at it on an SAU level. It doesn't have to be on the co-op grounds necessarily to benefit the co-op or benefit the taxpayer. But what Mike, the guy from
EEI.
Yep.
made really clear is that he felt that a rooftop solar, if it is structurally approved, would be tax neutral as far as funding it, and it has the benefit of displacing fossil fuel heating in some instances as well, so that it turns, particularly at the high school where we are not replacing the boilers, it turns those systems into backup systems.
Mm-hmm. But the question I think she's asking is, you presented two choices, rooftop or 3 acres of land. I mean, is another option parking lot coverage?
I think, we
That's a
hadn't
real
really thought
complex
of the
one.
parking
That
lot
would be
coverage.
complex, I would think.
Yeah.
But
There
I
you got a
just
lot
think
of
it
extra
would be
costs.
Similar, but it's, again, I think because of the value, cost effectiveness of rooftops, that's where we're probably gonna head first.
That's fine, I was
But-
just
but I
asking,
think-
because
But I think there's a, to
She
Tom's
just wants
point,
covered
I
parking.
would,
right?
as a committee member, I would
Figure
not
out
want to
if they-
bring options to you. I
Okay.
would want to bring a
Right, okay.
recommendation to you.
Okay.
no,
But
That's
at the,
totally-
thank
but
you.
at the same time, to Tom's point, I don't want you to lose sight of, we, as an SAU, have a lot of property. And where you place it doesn't matter, it's what schools you identify.
okay, interesting.
So if you wanted to do it in our neighboring community, who has 110 acres at CSDA,